Horizon Talk Radio are looking for guests and hosts. For further information, email horizontalkradio@outlook.com.
Horizon Talk Radio. Online from the Highlands of Scotland, we are voices from around the world. You're listening to The Andy Peter Show every Monday, Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. GMT and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, very warm welcome. Tonight is the return, well, at least for this channel, of the Burning Blogger. We'll call the gentleman that, because it makes sense. It's about the website. There's a lot of factual stuff on the website that I'm going to enjoy tonight and talk about. But basically, hello, the Burning Blogger, and tell us why you started the website. Is there anything personal? Why you decided to put some truth up on your website? Yeah, what's your passion?
Hi. In terms of why I started the website, it wasn't serious when I started it. It was just for fun. It was just a laugh. And then I started taking it a bit more seriously when certain things started happening that really bothered me and got my interest. So a lot of the foreign policy stuff that was going on, specifically Libya, but other stuff as well. And then a lot of the false flag kind of terror stuff that was going on in the war on terror prompted me to start doing research into that and writing about that. So that's what it became more about over time, as I moved away from the fun stuff and got into that stuff instead. That's pretty much it. There's not like a huge story behind it. I just like...
So it wasn't not a personal reason. It's just curiosity about Libya to start off with. Well, let's start off there then. I mean, I'm guessing we're talking Colonel Gaddafi and the link with the man that did the Lockerbie bombing, who was in Scotland, then he went back to Libya to die. That kind of thing. Tell us all about it. And I'll interject if I've got a good question.
Sure. Well, you want to talk specifically about Lockerbie, because that's I suppose that's an interesting place to start.
I mean, I was sorry. I'll just say my little bit here, and then you carry on. And then when you want a break,
sure,
just ask me for any comment. I was actually in. I must have been about 18. I don't know the exact age. Somewhere between 18 and 21 anyway. I'd left home and I saw something on the telly. Now, it's a little bit irrelevant, but it's also a little bit relevant, because on the telly I saw Aberdeen and the oil fields. And I thought, there's a lot of money going around in oil these days. Maybe I'll go up there and get a job as a chef or something, or barman, or, cleaner or something on one of the ships or the rigs. And I thought, I'll have to hitchhike then. So I got a few quid in my pocket, got my backpack on, my mum's shopping bag, it was pink. And I started hitchhiking and enjoying every minute of it. And then it was somewhere near Carlisle. I don't know exactly. We parked up, one lorry driver, we drove for 4 hours and he had to have a break. And I fell asleep and I woke up thinking I was in Scotland now, somewhere near Perth he was going to take me to. And I woke up and there was police everywhere. And there's stuff in the air, and I thought, what the hell's going on? And the driver said, there's been a plane crash. I said, oh, poor buggers. As you do when you're young, you don't understand nothing. He says, no, we think there's an explosion on an aircraft. And then at that point, I knew something serious was going on. So we couldn't go on the M74 to Scotland. They shut off the motorway and the part of the northbound M6. But we did get there where we're going via Edinburgh way. But so that's my part of it, because I watched the oil and I'm thinking Libya's got a lot to do with oil and their problems. And then, of course, I was actually driving on that night in the bombing.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, actually, that you were pretty much
weird but true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, the Lockerbie thing is, I I found out about this much later. I was a child when it actually happened, but yeah, I mean, Gaddafi always denied responsibility for Lockerbie, and the general consensus seems to be, even in Scotland, from what I understand, seems to be that al-Megrahi probably wasn't guilty, which is probably why they agreed to release him in the end on compassionate grounds, right, to send him home, because he was, I think he was dying from cancer at the time, and there's a lot of different theories on what really happened with Lockerbie. One of them is that someone else was behind it, possibly the Iranians. There's some talk of possibly it was Palestinian terrorism, but I think the Iranians are one of the more likely perpetrators of that, because the idea being that it was revenge for there was an Iranian airliner that got shot down by the Americans, I think, a couple of years earlier. So the intelligence community in the States seemed to be, the implication is that they knew it was the Iranians, but it was much more politically and geopolitically useful to blame it on Libya and Gaddafi so that they could impose sanctions. That was kind of the big thing. So the implication really was that they knowingly blamed the wrong party just because politically it was more useful. Because then after Lockerbie, they did impose sanctions, and that really set back Libya quite a bit for at least 10 years in terms of its economy and stuff like that. So, and they had to pay out, I think, something like $4 billion in compensation to the Lockerbie families, to the victims' families and stuff like that. So, yeah, in terms of the definitive story on who actually carried out the Lockerbie bombing, I think it's up in the air. I don't think it's been resolved at all. I just think the consensus now probably is that it wasn't al-Megrahi and it wasn't Libya. It was something else. There's also it's also out there. There's theory out there that the person behind it might have been. So there's this fella called Abu Nidal, who was a Palestinian terrorist. And there was a book written about him called I think it was called Gun for Hire. And this guy was, this guy was an extraordinary figure because he was a Palestinian terrorist, but there are lots of claims that he was essentially working against Palestinian. He was working against sort of Arafat and the PLO and all of that. That he was working directly for Mossad at one point. The implication being, to carry out like particularly nasty Palestinian terror attacks and to kind of bring down sort of the PLO. Via that route, sort of turn everyone against Arafat and the PLO. But then he was all over the place. He was in Syria doing work for the Syrian government at one point, and then against the Syrian government at one point. He was in Iraq. He was in Libya at one point. So this guy was like a quadruple agent or something. He was like, he was working for everyone. I think when he died eventually, I think it was during the Iraq invasion in 2003. I think Saddam's people basically felt like he was working for the Americans and he was somehow aiding the Americans in terms of the invasion, and they went in and killed him in his apartment or something because he was living in Baghdad at the time, I think. But there's a lot of implication that he might have been involved in Lockerbie as well. So there's no definitive answer, I don't think, but I think it's just this false kind of story or official narrative has been maintained for a really long time now, I guess 30 years or more. And it's quite difficult to shake people out of that because it's so ingrained in history books, I guess, and in everyone's consciousness.
Yeah, no, I thought, maybe I'm getting this wrong. Didn't another suspect get charged recently? Or did you say that already? Because I am trying to read it and keep up with it because I'm kind of fast-forwarding my memory. Wasn't it Abu Masood that was recently charged? But then, me personally, I agree with what you're saying. Whoever it was probably only the the foot soldiers to the real person that ordered it, and it was probably, allegedly, I'll have to say that word, definitely the PLO leader, Asafat, the leader of the country at the time. It had to have been him because, like Saddam and all the other bad people in the Middle East, it was always the leader that started something off, and they often blackmailed, I believe, and people to take out their, bad deeds of the day. So, and I definitely believe you about the El Magragi guy that was in Scotland jail. He was definitely 1,000,000% innocent. He was just unfortunate to, like most people are when they're in prison for a long time. He's a scapegoat. But yeah, this Abu Aguila Mohammed Massoud, I thought he was charged only recently. But then I may be wrong. I may be reading an old article.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think that might have slipped my radar a little bit. But yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure something did come up recently. But again, I don't think that's like a definitive thing. I think it's just, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the problem is, something becomes official history after a certain amount of time, and then it's very hard to break people out of that perception. With
exactly
contrary information.
I mean, it's a bit like saying something like, when did Elton John, sorry, Elvis, when did Elvis die, so people remember what they remember from the time. But if things change and
Sure, yeah.
you lose interest in Elvis, then you're not going to remember the date, or year, or the reason he died. And that's the same with these terrorist events.
Yeah. And also you have to look at, I suppose you have to look at what the political reasons or the geopolitical reasons are behind why, why blame is attributed to whoever it's attributed to at the time. It usually serves a purpose. I'm sure in some cases it's because it's the actual people that did it, but in a lot of cases, we know it's not. There's other reasons for it. And in terms of Libya, it was just convenient for American and British kind of foreign policy to put it on Libya because they needed a reason to sort of weaken and bring down the Libyan economy and to kind of weaken Gaddafi as well and his regime. So that was a way to do it, because it cost them so much to have it blamed on them.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever find out really who did it properly. But I mean, now they're putting on pressure to. Well, Biden, I mean, he's been a quiet little mouse, for 4 months. Joe Biden from the USA.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's putting pressure on Jordan's King Abdullah. So where's that coming from? They seem to be focused always on the Middle East. I'm pretty certain from growing up, the Middle East had problems, but they weren't the cause of everything that went wrong.
No, and that's an interesting one with Jordan. I'm not sure where that's coming from. I'm not sure what's going on there. Because Jordan is an ally, quite a strong ally of the US and the West. So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Yeah. I mean, I hope nothing happens in Jordan. I hope there's nothing kicks off there. Any kind of.
It's such a lovely country.
Change or anything like that.
It's not like obviously Iraq and Libya, where you could probably feel the tension as soon as you arrive at the airport. But Jordan is more of a bit like Dubai, really, in that country. It's just so sleepy that, the worst news headline would be probably a camel broke his leg. I'm just referring because I love travel programs, and Jordan is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and as I understand it, it's fairly stable. It's been a fairly stable country as well. There hasn't been much, as far as I know, there hasn't been much public dissatisfaction with the king or the regime or anything like that. So, not for a long time anyway. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, or he's behind it, or if it was just a little anomaly or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
with the Middle East, you always panic a little bit because there's such a history now of stuff kicking off out of very small things and becoming a disaster. So
That sounds like something we'll talk about later on. Some pandemic. So you're on the burningblogger.com. Your old website,
yeah.
was it called Burning Bedlam Blogger or something like that? Burning Bedlam. Tell me about that name, because when I was younger, the Bedlam meant everyone's in trouble, or you had to literally go to bed and behave for a little while, like the naughty step. Bedlam is when you're in trouble.
I'm trying to remember why I came up with that name. I think I struggled to come up with a name, and I thought some kind of tongue twist that would be funny. And yeah, and Bedlam, because I mean, just there was general chaos going on in terms of all the stuff that was happening, terrorism and migrant crisis and all this stuff. So I just thought that was a good that was a pretty good descriptive title, Burning Blogger of Bedlam. And now it's just Burning Blogger, just to make it a little easier for everyone.
And it is really annoying for whatever reason that these good websites have to come down and then go back up again, because you're not actually doing anything wrong. I mean, we did talk about an example before the show where people can make mistakes, and I probably did one myself today. But in general, these blogging sites are only publishing what's already out there with a editor's comment, like the Burning Blogger's view of that situation. And personal views are allowed. Even if it's wrong, it's allowed. It's when you publish absolute nonsense, that's when websites should be turned down, taken down even. So, I don't know why they have this habit of taking good people's websites down. I've seen loads of them over the years.
Well, when mine was taken down, I realized I looked into it a bit, and it was there was a bunch of blogs taken down pretty much around the same time. So I think it was a kind of purge of, like, they were just purging like a bunch of sites at the same time. So
interestingly, I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't matter if you support these people I'm trying to think of, like Alex Jones and David Icke. It doesn't matter either way whether people support them or not. But they come out with some controversial stuff these days, and no one ever takes their sites down. Now, you'd get one half saying, well, the good stuff, well, they're brilliant in what they do and they're absolutely right. Or you get the other half of it, they're sleeping with the enemy, kind of attitude. But I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the bigger they are, I suppose, the harder they are to take down. And the more possibility that they are some kind of controlled or co-opted kind of opposition. But who can say? I don't know.
Yeah, well, just as a little, what's the word? If you're on a .com address, it's very harder to take down instantly. If you're on a .co.uk and you live in the UK, then they can wipe you out overnight, literally. So .com's a bit harder. And if you go on, if you ever have trouble with websites, because I do loads of websites for other people, get a foreign website from the country you're already living in, like .turkey or I don't know, Israel or anywhere in the world, .australia even. It's very hard then, because the person trying to bring it down is arguing with two people's jurisdictions, two different countries. So that's my advice. Go out with your own country. You don't want a .co.uk controversial site for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I've discussed it with a few people, and I've concluded that I think the reason that my site was taken down was because of false flag articles. There was a big archive of false flag stuff on there to do with terror attacks and stuff like that. So I think that was probably it. That was probably the main reason.
Well, I run a website, and I'm not wanting to promote it on your show, but I mean, I will do because it's interesting. It's shakespeare.com. So it's SHAKES, spear.com. My author friend from Canada, Timothy Spearman, and he's been talking about 911 and all the false flags, the Sandy Hook. I mean, basically every one of them for many, many years. And not once have we had the website taken down, or even people, threatening to take it down. Because I think his way of researching things, being an author and a historian, he actually is bang on, with the truth. So he doesn't. I think some people make the mistake by giving their opinion a bit more than they should, because he only gives you what he sees, and he doesn't make any opinion up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, my stuff was pretty forensic. I mean, I don't think it was less. It was less opinion and more kind of just looking at, certain information and facts and stuff, looking for stuff that wasn't being talked about or published elsewhere was kind of like what I was trying to aim for most of the time. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the reason was it was taken down. I think that was the reason, but it could have been something else. I have no idea.
Well, let's go back on the false flags just for one or two, just quickly, because it's all about burningblogger.com anyway. I mean, 911 then, do you think it was, I mean, most people obviously think it was an inside job by the intelligence services of the US. Sure. They don't, people don't believe it was anything to do with bin Laden, and he's probably died 4 times since then anyway, so it don't really matter. But I was in a pub this time when that happened. Was it 92 or 93? I mean, my memory's not very good. I'm only early 50s.
2001.
Yeah, sorry. I got married in 92, sorry. Yeah, we moved to that area in 92. So 2001, I was in a pub in Wishaw, Lanarkshire, Scotland. I live up here. And it was one of these sports pubs. So they normally have the sport channels on, 5 or 6 TVs. So you can get the picture there. So they had Sky News on one, they had BBC on the other. And Sky News, I thought, okay, the Twin Towers are still there. I think it was Tower 7. You look at BBC, and the woman was reporting the tower was down, but then you were looking that way and you're thinking, hey? Then you're going on your phone and ringing people. Is that tower down? What was going on there? And no one's ever explained it to me yet properly.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. I mean, there is an explanation I saw for that, and I don't know if it holds up or not. Which is that it was, actually, no, I don't know. It sounds stupid now that I'm thinking about it. It was maybe to do with the time difference and I don't know. Yeah, maybe that doesn't work.
It could be because they were doing it simultaneously live.
Yeah.
If it wasn't live, you could argue the fact that that was broadcast a little bit. Well, I don't know, and nor do I actually. But I do know one thing: the planes that hit the tower were small planes, and they was projected in the way that lasers are projected. I don't know if you watched Christmas this year when they did the New Year in Scotland, and they used these drones to make images over Scotland. And it's that technology that were used in them days to make these small planes look big ones. Or even no planes at all, some people are saying. But, I mean, Professor Fetzer, who's one of the top people on 911, says it was small planes for sure. I mean, even he doesn't technically agree with the theory of the technology to show, boost pictures and imagery, but he does know that it wasn't big planes because they would have knocked them down in an instant.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the problems is that people get so caught when it comes to 9/11. They get so caught up in a particular. I mean, they divide themselves into groups based on what version of the theory they think is the truth or whatever. You know, whether it was planes or no planes or holograms or energy weapons or bombs in the basement or whatever. Whereas I think like just come together on the fact that we agree it was an inside job. It's just that's the point. The specific mechanics of it aren't as important as just acknowledging that the official story isn't really what happened.
And I think we can have that example as a brilliant one for most things that are happening that we don't understand. They're either we can't understand it. It's an inside job, or don't worry about it because you're just worrying about nothing. Yeah, definitely.
Because I mean, are you aware of the Israeli spy ring that was arrested on 9/11? Do you know about this, or should I go into it a little bit?
No, please go into it because I've only heard clips.
Yeah, so basically, so this is basically I don't know if you remember, like a couple of years ago, Donald Trump, he made this big speech about on the morning of 9/11 there were all these dancing, cheering Arabs in like New Jersey, and it was terrible, that they were celebrating and all that. And actually, what he was doing weirdly was like, because it was kind of a bullshit thing he was doing. It was kind of he was twisting the story because the original story is that they were dancing kind of Israelis in New Jersey, right? And what had happened is very quickly after 9/11, the police and the FBI in New Jersey, they arrested a whole bunch of Israeli citizens, which they called an Israeli spy ring. Some of them were Mossad, it later turned out, who were acting suspiciously, on the morning of 9/11. So one of the things was that they found a group of them. They were across the Hudson River from New York, and they were on a building top, and they basically set up a camera to film the Twin Towers. But they were filming before any planes emerged on the scene or whatever. So it's that question of why were they filming it in the first place, and how did they know something was going to happen? And then they ended up, they looked into this and they ended up arresting like 60 people in that area who were all kind of linked to Israel. And they found, it was bizarre actually. I mean, they found some of these guys with like box cutters and fake passports and weird stuff like that. And then there was a van. There was a van that one of the groups was traveling in, and it had like a mural on the side of the van showing a plane going into the Twin Towers. This is the most bizarre stuff you could possibly think of. I can't wrap my head around why you would even have that mural on there. That just doesn't make any sense. But that stuff's out there, it did happen. And I think people forget now, but for at least the first few days after the attack happened, they hadn't officially blamed it on bin Laden yet, or on Al Qaeda yet. It was still kind of up in the air as to who it was, and there were some people in the American news media talking about this Israeli spy ring and whether they had been involved or not. And then what seemed to happen was, at some point, they just decided, no, okay, let's just say it was bin Laden. Let's make that the official story. Bin Laden was completely denying it at the time. He said he had nothing to do with it. And the Israeli spy ring just got completely forgotten about. None of them got arrested. I mean, they were detained, but then they were basically all sent back to Israel. And some of them went on Israeli TV and were talking about, they were just trying to document a historic event. But that still doesn't actually answer the question of how you knew the historic event was about to happen in the first place. So there's a lot of weird stuff that was going on there, whatever conclusion you want to draw, because I'm sure the Saudis were involved. I'm sure, I assume that Israeli intelligence was involved, and obviously I think the Bush regime certainly knew what was going on, and they were involved. So there's some mixture there of different organizations and factors, in play, working together, I guess, to bring this thing about. Is what is the conclusion that I would draw from the available information. But I certainly don't think it was, 18 hijackers who got lucky. to pull off like such a ridiculously enormous terrorist attack. When Al Qaeda's reach at that point, yeah, I think the biggest thing they'd ever done at that point was blowing up a truck or something in Kenya or something like that. So,
yeah, I totally agree with you. Talking about hijackers, I mean, I know we're moving story to story. I mean, I haven't seen this one on your website, and we're talking again earlier about who will never, maybe we'll never know about Lockerbie. There's another one, MH370, the flight.
right.
No one's ever said anything about that after a while. I mean, again, there's been shot down. There's been the people on board was, there was experts in something, so it was shot down for that reason. Then there was about 10 million different scenarios.
Wasn't it? Was it
even though
researchers? Was it HIV,
even though
HIV researchers or something like that? There was a whole load of HIV experts and AIDS researchers on the plane.
Yeah, not just that. There was other researchers as well. In one story, but the bit I can't understand is they found part of that plane or bits and pieces, but they haven't really categorically said, we've got the whole plane. And they certainly haven't mentioned bodies, have they? I don't think. The trouble is, this is what they, what's the word? Thrive on. They get excited when the public forget about these stories, and then it's so, 2 years later that public forget these things, like I'm doing now. Not that it's not interesting; it's more totally the opposite. I'm very interested in it, but there's other things to fight for, and that's why we forget.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much news. So much happens. I think they rely on that as well to just eventually we just don't care anymore because everything moves on. The agenda moves on. Our focus moves on to something else.
Yeah, I mean, just as a little, there's been many, many different stories on this, but on the 28th of March, that's why I thought this was a little bit interesting. Apparently, it was shot down by US Air Forces to seize electronic equipment on the way to China. A French investigative journalist argues the doomed plane was down by the US as a last resort to stop a special cargo from falling into Chinese hands, which would obviously give them one over the US. And yeah, so that was 2014. That was a long while ago. And
yeah, it makes you a little scared to get on planes, doesn't it? Just a little bit.
I was scared, I suppose, when I travelled to the US, probably 6 months after 9/11. Not scared as in, no, I was happy. What's the word when you're not sweating, you're not shaking, and you still do it, but in your heart there's something not right about doing it. Yeah, it's one of them. I'm going to do it, but hey, I'm hoping for the best. So yeah. But I actually, I'm totally the opposite. I'm scared when I know there's bad weather when I'm flying somewhere long. I worry about the weather and God, and I do about bombs.
Have you ever had a really bad turbulence on a flight? Have you experienced that?
Well, talking about that, I think in the UK, so we're about an hour to hour and 20 minutes from takeoff to land in the UK. Now, some of them journeys I've had maximum of 20 minutes where it's shaking like mad and the wife is moaning and screaming. And so I've had the 20-minute one, but we've also had kind of a 2-hour one to the Dominican Republic, and it just wouldn't give up. I've got a third one though. So it wouldn't give up, but it wasn't as bad as the UK one. So it's kind of shake, 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 stop for a minute or two, shake, shake, shake. But I think our worst one was last November. We took off to go to Fuerteventura from Edinburgh. And looking at the video back, because my son took it, and we took videos on the plane, it absolutely looked like it was turning over to the left, then turning over to the right on takeoff. Now, that itself was scary, and that probably ruined the whole experience of flying that particular holiday. But when it got up in the air, it actually shaked for 4 hours. Now, it was... I mean, my wife is really scared about flying in turbulence, but even she managed it just about, so it wasn't like the 20-minute one, which we think was really worse, but it was constant. It was 4 hours of constant. It was a bit like the Dominican one. It wasn't, you couldn't hide or scream enough.
Yeah.
but yeah, sorry, I do go on. So I've had 3 examples really of not being happy with flying.
No, yeah, I've had one. I mean, I was a child when it happened, and it was pretty terrifying. It was mostly terrifying because everyone around me, all the grown-ups and stuff, were reacting so badly to it, so going into panic attacks and saying prayers and trying to speak to God and stuff, it scared the shit out of me. But, I guess it's a weird thing because it's a kind of an unnatural thing. I guess everyone takes it for granted that we fly on planes, but it's kind of an unnatural thing to be in the air for that length of time on this big thing made out of metal, When you actually think about it, it's it makes you kind of anxious.
Yeah, I mean, when I first took off on the first plane, even I'm not the strongest willed person, but I'd like to think that a plane or a car crashing, I could probably overcome it all. But no, the plane definitely made me scared. And with planes, I have to go on them more and more for me to get my confidence based on, and what got me through a lot of these fears, I didn't go on a course. I actually watched planes in turbulence and crashing that actually made me feel safe because, they're telling you that a plane crashing is so rare that, you'd see 10 crashes on the motorway before you see a plane crash. And we haven't, I don't think, had a plane crash in the UK, a proper one with, more than 1 or 2 people dying. We haven't had one for years, so that just shows you how safe they really are.
Sure, yeah.
What about the epidemic then, or the plandemic? Which version would you like to talk about?
Sure, I don't know. I mean, I can go for plandemic if you like. I mean, there's obviously an element of that. So
we know we've got to put out the facts again. I mean, because I'm one of these people. Yeah, I listen to both sides and make up my own mind. Yes, there is a virus of some kind. Why? Because I've spoken to people who are human beings, and they know people are human beings that have died of a real virus. So that bit in my mind is very clear. The washing your hands, the social distancing, and putting the country in lockdown and all that, many, many times. I understand the reasons, but I don't think that should have happened because, Sweden and other countries, New Zealand, and they've done less. Still had problems with people dying, but they've actually not shut down as much. Now, if 2 countries can do that, and even Scotland, we got our figures last July to about 1 or 2 people a week dying, and maybe 10 or 12 people a day having the virus. So, is it a pandemic? Is it a health thing that is out of control? It's very hard on this one because in the 2012 Olympics, if you've not seen the video, this will be a good one to publish. It actually shows on the floor when the lights are shining on the floor when the opening ceremony happens. It looks like a virus on the floor. Although it could have been anything else, they said it wasn't a virus. But then you see people in PPE and masks, pushing around empty beds in the, as many beds as they could fit into that area. And there's more and more on that one. So is that maybe a prompt that we're going to have an epidemic in the future? They're already talking about the Hopkins, is it James Hopkins University? They're already saying that there's going to be SPARS, not SARS. We've had SARS 1, SARS 2 now, and it's going to be SPARS, SPARS. And it's not going to be the shop that brings you food. It's going to be the biggest epidemic in history on 2025 to 2027. Now, they're a university and they're predicting that. The Olympics, okay, we can just put that as a coincidence. But at the moment, there's no reason to lock us down for, I don't think, unless you know any better.
No, I mean, I would say that the two countries that you mentioned Sweden and New Zealand. Not that I'm disagreeing with you, but I would say that those are smaller populations, so maybe that's got a lot to do with them managing better, without lockdowns necessarily.
Yeah, and you might be right, because Scotland's got a far less population to England, and of course we know another fact: Northern Ireland has done very well, even against us in Scotland, because they're smaller again. So yeah, I mean, it may be to do with that, and I guess when we all meet up, mums and dads visit grannies around the world and around the UK, that is when it starts spreading again if you're not vaccinated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's all really tricky. I wondered a year ago. I was kind of wondering if the whole thing was kind of like a psychological operation, like it was just a test to kind of gauge what our level of compliance and obedience would be, as societies, just to see how much control they could exercise over us, and how to what extent we would just fall in line with that or not. And I think that might be a part of it. That's obviously not the whole of it, but I think that might be a part of it. It might be sort of a test run to kind of see how we behave.
Well, you definitely.
I'm 1,000,000%. The one thing I've been clear about, and I've said this to people, is that I completely disagree with those people who say there's no virus, because I think that there absolutely was a virus. So on that part, I agree with you completely. I think people saying there's no virus is, that's just problematic, because there clearly was, And like you, I've spoken to, I know people who've had it, so that part of it is not nonsense.
And I've known activists that would give their last pound and the last loaf of bread to someone who's hungry because, they believe in feeding homeless and blah, blah, blah. Whatever their cause is, they've had it as well. So sure. Even my activist friend in Canada, the Shakespeare.com, he's actually had COVID-19, and he's the one who doesn't want the vaccine, but he's saying I don't have to have it now because I've already had the virus. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there though that will go way over the top on this. I mean, there's one thing, tell the truth and share the truth. That's a good idea, but don't sort of, the vaccine's another issue as well, but just talking about the virus, it definitely is here, like you said, and population-wise, maybe why other countries have definitely controlled it better. But I think what is unfair is how they've handled it. That's where there's questions there, it's funny. They took the piss, really, pardon my language. They locked you down once, and they didn't promise, of course, to not lock you down again, but they gave you a little bit of hope because they opened up in the summer last year, and they said, look, we're going to get on track with the vaccine, and then, it should be okay. And then I think they took the mickey by locking you down a second time too late. That's what I meant to say. Now, in England in November, it was way out of control, and they just kept it going until early January or late December. well, Scotland late December. They would have known with their figures and their modelling that by late August, early September, it started to go wrong, and then by October, we're definitely going the wrong direction, because it's the only way is up. They say if it keeps going up and it keeps going up, it means there's a problem. Lock down if you have to, but why I think they took the piss a little bit is because they left it too long, and they didn't have to leave it too long. They borrowed trillions and billions out of taxpayers' money and will be paying for this for the rest of our lives. They're working people. They should have just done the right thing, and they didn't. And then, of course, you worry why, not you personally, but why does Matt Hancock give the contract to his neighbour for the PPE when it's coming from China anyway, and it's a bit, they're not very good. They've got substance, something on them anyway when you breathe in from the chemicals, that's it. And they're not making you very well. But you're absolutely right. This was an opportunity, not initially, I don't think. It was the other way round. They got a problem. They knew it was going to come out of control. Let's use our little plan to see if the people believe us and listen to us. And my friend in Germany, he absolutely thinks they wanted to try Hitler's techniques. It may not be because, this pandemic, the next pandemic even, but they wanted to know how people react. I'm guessing on this one because my friend now is in prison in Austria, and that's how I communicate with him, through prison mail. And he's an expert in German, and he was born in the UK, doctor of stuff in London. And he's saying what they're going to do. They're planning for the future, basically. If US attacked the UK, if China attacked the UK, they wanted to know how the people will react in severe circumstances, like go in your house, how long will you stay there for, if it's chemical warfare, wearing masks, wearing this, getting food, would you panic buy? And that's exactly what they've done it for. But you could look at it another way, Burning Blogger. All these things was thought about in history, but we still haven't had that event that you need to plan for. So,
yeah,
you carry on.
Well, I think I'll just throw a few things in there. In terms of a lot of it being psychological, and it's a test, kind of a test run for something else, for something that might be coming down the line. I think that's absolutely right. I think that's what's going on. They were gauging us, to see how we'd react and all of that. But I think, although I'm acknowledging completely that the virus is real, that there is a question of how much was it completely an accident, or how much was it planned, and how much was this brought about deliberately? And I'm sure some of this stuff. There was stuff like there was the Event 201 summit in New York a couple of months before the virus broke out. I'm assuming you know about that. That's I heard about it, to be honest, but I haven't really had any sort of reason to talk to anybody about it. I just thought, I always think that numbers, why are they so coincidental all the time? Just a quick example, and then we'll go back to what you were saying. Prince Philip died. It was on the 99th day of this year. He was 99 years of age. And there's about 4 more things. 9th of April, I think. There's 4 more on top of that actually will make you think, as an alternative person or someone who don't believe what the government tells you, was that planned, all these 9s? Anyway, so that was just to give an example. Yeah, I'm sure that there's definitely something in that as well. I don't know. I'm not big on numerology and stuff, but I know a lot of people are, so I'm sure there's a lot to be read into those things too. yeah, in terms of so Event 201 was a big summit they had in New York a couple of months before the outbreak in Wuhan, where they were basically discussed. It was a simulation of a coronavirus pandemic breaking out, and it pretty. And if you go to I think the Event 201 website of the official event is still all online and stuff, so everyone can go look it up, to see what they were talking about. It's just weird that happened right before the pandemic, and that's specifically exactly what they were talking about. They were even specifically talking about it coming out of China and infecting the whole world and all that kind of stuff, and then the effects on the economy and all this, and how fast a vaccine could be found and all this stuff. And obviously, Bill Gates' foundation was involved, and the Hopkins Center was involved, and so there's lots of suspicious stuff like that. And then you have also Gates was also involved in something called ID 2020, this is something predating, obviously, the pandemic, but the idea was the ID 2020 program is being run by something called Gavi, which is the Global Alliance for Vaccines or something like that, Vaccine Initiatives or something like that. And their whole spiel, their whole thing, their whole program that they were trying to push forward was they want to get everyone basically into a digital identity system where everything's kind of locked. All of your business is locked into a digital database, I guess, a system like that. And the idea was to have what do you call it? Not I don't want to say microchips because I don't think that's right, but the idea was to have something literally in the body, injected into the body, that would work as your ID, and you would be scanned with it would be like a human barcode basically, and you'd be scanned to identify yourself, and who you are, and and to do all your financial transactions and to show your medical records and all this stuff wherever you are. And what's really interesting about that also is that if you actually look at what they were saying in their official ideas and stuff for this, the way they were going to do it was through vaccination. So you get everyone vaccinated, and that's the initial pretext. That was going to be the initial pretext of how to get this the ball rolling on this thing. So via vaccinations, to be immunized against whatever, you would therefore get this digital tattoo injected into you, and you would be logged into this system. So and that was literally called ID 2020. And then you had a pandemic unfold in 2020, just coincidentally, and now everything's all the talk is about vaccinations and future pandemics that are coming, like you just talked about, that are being projected. So
I think what you're talking about, I'm glad you made me aware of the other two things now. Just for the listeners, so the New York 201 event was done in October 2019. It's absolutely 100% accurate to what he's just said. The website is centerforhealthsecurity.org. It's not maybe the official one, but centerforhealthsecurity.org, and it mentions everything about the John Hopkins Center was there. And so bear in mind what I said earlier. These are the ones that John Hopkins are saying that in 2025 to 2027, there's going to be SPARS, SPARS. And then back in Europe also, ID2020.org, that's very simple, ID2020.org is the identity thing. And, it's actually scary because what a lot of people are saying, now it's all linking in my mind, they're saying that this vaccine that you're getting now is going to be useful for the future, because all they need to do is either inject, the people who are willing, they'll just inject you like a top-up, and you'll be then, you'll be still okay to get all your ID out of you. But they're also saying that even if you've had the injection and you don't want any more top-ups, they've got enough information in the Pfizer vaccine and the one like it, the Moderna, because they're different vaccines to the AstraZeneca.
Sure.
I think AstraZeneca was based on the old style of giving vaccines. So apparently that information that can change stuff in your body already is there, whether you like it or not. And that's what some people say. But I didn't know what the hell they was meaning until you've just told me. So it makes sense a little bit now. I'm connecting the dots.
Well, and plus all these things, ID 2020, and I mean, all this stuff predates the pandemic, but not by much though, only by a couple of years. So, and also the other thing, I mean, I found this out quite recently, but they were discussing the idea of vaccine passports was being discussed in 2018 in the European one of the European Commission councils or something like that. So yeah, these ideas aren't just coming out of the wood. They're not coming out just in response to something that's happened randomly in the past year. These things have all been there in the background, the whole time. So when you take that into account, it's very difficult to trust the narrative and to trust. And again, that's me saying that as someone who believes there is a virus. I do think there is a virus, but I'm just the question in my mind is how deliberate has a lot of this been, as opposed to just accidental.
Yeah, it makes sense with the experiment, definitely. And I mean, they're blaming China. I mean, could it be remotely possible that there was experimenting in Wuhan and this little virus ran away and then somebody travelled? And I mean, is that possible? Because at the moment, the World Health Organization doesn't agree with that, do they?
No, but I mean, there's something I can tell you. I mean, there's something that not a lot of people seem to know or realize, which is that, I mean, everyone knows, I'm sure you know that there's the Wuhan biological lab was right there next to the so-called wet market where this virus supposedly came out of. So that's the first thing. There was a study done in 2015 involving Chinese and American scientists based out of the Wuhan biological lab, and I think Chapel Hill University in the United States. It was joint research that they were doing into coronaviruses, into bat coronaviruses, and this was in 2015. So I mean, you could look up scientific journals and stuff from around that time, and they were talking about it. But the interesting thing is there were a lot of experts and scientists and medical experts at the time who were warning them against it, saying this is really reckless, dangerous experiments that you're doing with this virus because you don't know, it could get out, something could go very wrong. So, I mean, so that makes you wonder, whether that's where all this has ultimately come from, and that was joint Chinese-US research. And then you have this, and it was involving the Wuhan lab, and then you have this thing coming out of Wuhan. So, I mean, if you connect all those dots, it just leads me to wonder whether this was all done on purpose, or whether it was an accident, that came from this research, but then they've nevertheless decided to use this and the fallout from this to their advantage anyway, because why not? So
yeah, and of course the 2012 London Olympics. I mean, that's got to be a clue as well. I mean, yeah, talking about connecting the dots.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the Olympics. With the Olympic thing, it is very curious. But I just wonder if maybe we're guilty of reading too much into it with hindsight, with what we know now. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, they explain. In fairness, I mean, I always put two sides to the argument when I publish normally, apart from today. But anyway, so I put the other version. And they explained it about the Grim Reaper. It was reference Harry Potter, and the beds were reference our good NHS. And I suppose if they had no masks on and no PPE, and there was just doctors and nurses doing it, I think I wouldn't have even batted an eyelid. The fact there was all PPE made me believe that sort of story more. I'll send you this one I've got, because the guy goes into a lot of facts while you're watching the ceremony. He doesn't talk, he just puts words up, titles, and judge it from there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, nothing would surprise me anymore, really. But yeah, I don't know. The Olympics one is interesting. It's hard to be definitive about that. But yeah.
Yeah, but it just sort of fits, doesn't it? 2012, then 2015, what you mentioned, and Wuhan and so on with the ID 20. It's all following on.
Well, and the problem is, no one. Especially in the mainstream kind of media, no one has mentioned ID 2020 at all during this whole crisis. No one has mentioned Event 201. Well, actually, maybe they have mentioned Event 201, but no one's mentioned ID 2020. No one's mentioned the 2015 stuff I'm talking about, the studies into coronaviruses. And these are all things that you would think, that should be coming up. And it doesn't come up at all. A lot of it doesn't even come up in most conspiracy theory research either that I've been looking at. People seem to either not know about it or just they avoid it for some reason. And they focus on kind of other stuff like 5G towers and stuff like that, which is, that's stuff that's difficult to prove. That's just a lot of that is speculation. Whereas what I'm saying isn't speculation. You can go look up the 2015 studies and stuff, but no one, a lot of people don't seem to be interested in that for some reason.
Well, just to let people know, if you Google Yahoo, any search engine, they're deliberately withholding this information too, because there's only 16,000 results in most of the major search engines, and one is a website or a newspaper called Bear News. Biometric update. NBC mentions COVID passports, and then they mention the executive director of ID 2020, and two more. The New Humanitarian is a paper, and Ledger Insights. They're the only. Basically, most of these are financial people commenting on the idea, but there's no Sun there, no BBC, no ITV, etc., etc., etc.
And they've got to be ignoring it on purpose because, unless they're just really bad over there.
Well, unless ID 2020 is made from a conspiracy theorist. Do you know what I mean? Because they always ignore conspiracy things. No, it's deliberately done that way, I think, my friend, as you know.
Yeah, and also something I found out recently, someone informed me of this, is that the organization behind ID 2020, the Global Alliance for Vaccine Initiatives, Gavi, they're completely immune from any legal action. They have a diplomatic immunity and legal immunity. They can't be taken to court or they can't be investigated by the police for anything. So if they do, if there is any implication of wrongdoing or anything like that, or if things go badly somewhere down the line, there's no recourse to legal action against them or anything like that, which is very curious because I don't know why any organization should be immune like that.
Absolutely. Can I ask you the burning question? Because
Sure.
you're the burning blogger, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, God, I'm good with my words. Will you be taking the coronavirus vaccine?
Oh, wow.
To protect others, of course. To protect others, not to protect yourself. Or both.
Yeah.
Well, I'll help you out a little bit and the people there.
Yeah.
Because I travel a lot, I have also had evidence in all my young life and my family's lives of vaccine damages. They've not been documented by NHS, and we agree with you. But it's been almost, look, you don't talk about it and we won't sue you if you mention it kind of attitude. So we've had vaccine damages in our family and we're anti-vaccine 1,000,000%, but we've all had our vaccines and we've all had no problems, not even a headache or fever. So, and we've had both of them now, me and my wife, and my daughter's had the first. My son's too young. He's waiting for his second, first. That's it. My daughter's waiting for a second. And although I don't agree with it, because we travel a lot, we love travelling, love meeting other cultures, and it was kind of a bit of a blackmail in a way. It was like, if you don't do this, but
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's coercion. It is blackmail because they're saying, obviously it's not mandatory. You don't have to take it, but basically you do because otherwise
it's a
you're going to be shut up.
psychological weapon without actually saying it.
Yeah,
A bit like the incident I mentioned before the show. I had two choices there: get into trouble, someone's going to wind me up, but I felt I had to delete it straight away. I think I probably, I've just had an email back from somebody who's really good at this, and he actually said, just leave it there, they won't bother with you. But my heart told me, a bit like the vaccine, if you want to travel, now that's different. So I took my vaccine because I want to travel. But if someone said to me, you need a vaccine to go to the pub, you need a vaccine to go to the sporting event, or the music festival, then I definitely wouldn't have done. It was only because my theory is if I've got germs and other people got germs, keep it in this country, fair enough. But if I'm going abroad, I expect to have a vaccine because I don't want to take my germs somewhere else. And that's why I took it, really.
sure. And that's I mean, when it comes to the vaccine, it's tricky. That's something that I kind of hesitate to talk about. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, everyone has to make their own choice whether to take the vaccine or not. There's no right or wrong thing. It's just, and I'm not really an anti-vaxxer either because I mean, most of us who live for example, in the UK have been vaccinated against all kinds of stuff when we were children and stuff like that. It's not like all vaccines are terrible and sinister or anything like that. I think the problem is I don't like the terms under which this vaccine has been put forward to me. Like, firstly, I don't like being coerced or arm twisted into something, and that's how it's coming across. And also, if like me, you don't trust the narrative about this pandemic in terms of where it came from and how, whether it was deliberate or not, and all this kind of stuff, then obviously you're going to have a really guarded attitude towards being vaccinated as well, especially because these are essentially experimental vaccines that have not really been tested. That being said, I mean, my instinct is that I don't want to take a vaccine, and I'll probably try and resist it for as long as possible, but I'm entirely open to the possibility that I'll end up taking one eventually, because if life is made too difficult for me without it, that's kind of the whole point, right? Then I guess I might end up in a position where I have to take it, and I just will. So.
And looking at it the other way, I mean, if you look at it the other way, I mean, if you didn't take it, it wouldn't be no big deal. But if you took it and they started controlling all of us, I mean, very luckily we'll all be dead soon anyway. I mean, I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's took all these years to control people. I think they're gonna control people the way that the New World Order and all them other people think. And I don't knock them in a way for what they think, because 20 years ago, and this is very weird, coincidence, you telling me tonight about ID 2020. 20 years ago they said, we're not sure how it's going to work, but you're going to be either microchipped, you're going to have to have mandatory vaccines,
Sure.
and they'll make a reason for having it. So I say that if you're over 40 at the moment, and a lot of people are probably not, which is a shame, but if you're over 40, then in your lifetime, it's not going to happen to you. It may happen to your children or your children's children. Fair enough. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but just enjoy life and do what you have to do to make your life, whether you have a vaccine, whether you have, or you don't have it. Just think of others. If you're not having the vaccine, just stick to the washing your hands thing, and until they've had their vaccines.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the best philosophy for life in general, I guess. Is just try and enjoy yourself what you can, and try and be
Just
considerate.
chill,
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that, I guess.
You spend all day, wouldn't you? And I did it when this pandemic first first came out, and I'm one of the people who try and do the truth for the last 8 years now, 2013. And once it was happening, wasn't it? And we're because we're dumb, we don't do the thinking at that point. So November, December 19. Oh, that's bad, isn't it? Thank God we haven't got it. It's China as usual. And then 20 came in January. Oh, well, it's spread a couple of places. But that's, all these thousands of miles. That may be the selfish thing in my mind. And then in February, it started to hit Europe. Oh, dear, that's not so good, is it? Oh, well, even if it hits the UK, it's not going to be many, is it? Because we're in Scotland. So it was 10th of March, I think it was. Maybe the 15th of March. That week, anyway. Scotland had its first case. And then you look back and you think, bloody hell, this is scary. And when they went into lockdown, I think it was 26th of March, all governments just listened to Boris. Yeah, we're all in a lockdown. And you really did panic. For about 3 days, I panicked, buy things in, get the food in. What made us do that, though? The shops are going to be open. They've already told us that. But we're running out for tissues. We're running out for food. We're filling the freezers. We're getting the beer in. We're getting the fags in. Getting the whatever you need. But why did we do it? Because he said shops will be open. The chemist will be open. But no, we panicked anyway. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Even I did.
Yeah, the psychology of all of it is really interesting. It's one of the most interesting things. Yeah, I don't know why people panicked.
Yeah.
I guess there were very dramatic kind of scenes and stuff coming out of Italy, I think, at the time, and obviously China. So I don't know, but I do think also, I think it depends on. I think the whole thing has been probably very largely inflated. And it's kind of illusory, like an illusion, not entirely an illusion, because there is a virus, but in terms of how widespread it really has been and how deadly. I mean, it's like a 1% mortality rate or something like that. So 99% of people who get it aren't going to die, and probably aren't going to be that badly affected. That 1%, overwhelmingly is very old, very elderly people who are vulnerable anyway and have pre-existing health conditions and all of that. And I think in terms of the numbers and the statistics that are thrown about all the time, they're not reliable. I mean, it's impossible to know like what the real numbers are, because there's so much confusion over how they're counting, how they're classifying the deaths from COVID, and it's being conflated with other stuff. And so,
Well, a simple way of dying, is this way. If you had a heart attack and it made you dead, I would have put that on the birth certificate as died of a heart attack with, let's say, blocked arteries or whatever the fancy term is, as a contributor, But, they kind of don't do that. I give this example all the time. You went into hospital, you're fit, healthy, 20, 30-year-old. You went in there with a broken leg. You got an infection, not because of COVID, but it just happened and it wasn't good for you and it made you die. You died of a leg infection due to a broken leg, and they died with COVID. You only died with it because it was around the country and it may be within that hospital at the same time. So when that's on the death certificate, they're actually counting you as dying with of COVID. But the people who go into hospital because of having COVID is, the other version is died of COVID. Now, I know that absolutely from a doctor myself, an NHS doctor. He says what they're doing, if you had another illness, it's with, they're counting that as the same as if you died of it. As in, you had no other health problems, but you just died with COVID-19, and they're putting the figures together.
And that's why the numbers, because the numbers are huge, but that's why the numbers can't be trusted, because for that reason. I mean, I've read about someone who had COVID, contracted COVID, but not badly, and then he got over it, and then within like 30 days of that, something happened. I think he got hit by a lorry or something, and they put it down as a COVID death. So that there's just stupid stuff like that going on to create this illusion and to inflate everything. Whereas the virus, it probably isn't anything like as bad as we think it is. I mean, I know someone who, I've been speaking to someone who works in a care home where there's been COVID, but she's told me that they've put down stuff, they've registered deaths as having been from COVID that clearly weren't, and they knew they weren't, but they were being told to. So that's how the classification system works. So it's all been really badly skewed, and I don't think there's even any way of knowing what the real numbers are in terms of how many people have died from it.
No, even with their own.
The other problem.
Sorry. I was going to say, even with their own stats, they've shown that the deaths at the moment it's only a little bit over the natural deaths. You compare to natural dying of natural age groups, it's only a little above, but an organisation, you've probably heard of it, ukcolumn.org, Brian Garish and Mike Robinson, they really been doing this day in and day out since last January, and they can show on the ukcolumn.org that these figures, even with, because they're not allowed to guess or they use their own facts from, the newspapers, the political statements, and they can prove that these figures are falsified only by using their own facts. And that's what I like about the UK column. They really dig into the nitty-gritty. The only problem with the column, and like other big alternative media, they want some bloody money to keep going. And although I respect they need money to keep going, surely the truth should be for free, I think. But that's because I'm a God-bearing person that doesn't go to church, but I follow the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, you can't really knock people for that. I mean, I've started asking for donations and stuff on my site only because I'm in a position now where there's costs involved. So, like, obviously it would help me to. Whereas before I wasn't. Before I got taken down the first time, everything was just for free because I didn't have any costs. I was doing it for free. But now, it's just the way these things go. You have to kind of.
No, but the two people are paid anyway from the donations, and if they don't get donations, they don't get paid. So. They have run that website for 10 years. I mean, I'm not knocking them, but I'm just thinking the truth should be free. But then, they are paid to put on a 2-hour show every day, 5 days a week. And they did it for so many years. I think it was 10 for free. So, I kind of wasn't knocking them, but I think I was making a point about if you don't donate to someone, you don't get the truth. And that means we're left in the hands of the mainstream media. And that is worse than death.
Yeah, I mean, the mainstream media is pretty useless. There's no real investigative journalism of any kind going on in the mainstream media. Certainly that's been the case for the last several years, maybe longer than that. But certainly now there's none. Because again, something as big as the pandemic and all the coverage there's been over it, and like I said, to not mention some of those things at all, like I was saying, the coronavirus research that was done in 2015, that's not hard. If I can find it, then The Guardian can surely find it if they wanted to. So, I mean, they're either like really bad at their jobs or they're deliberately, just omitting a lot of information on purpose.
Exactly. All right, then. Do you want to wrap this up this time? And we can always come back again if you've got a friend that someone wants to talk as well. We can do that. I also know Timothy Spearman, my friend, Shakespeare.com. Because of what you do is similar to him. He'd love to have a chat about stuff, and he knows everything about anything. And I'm great. Just trying my best being who I am and my show what I do. And, it'd be absolutely lovely to have you back again.
That'd be great. Yeah. It's been fun. It'll be great to do that.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Well, you take care, and I'll send a copy of this in the morning when I've edited it, and it'll be on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and 50 other ones, as well as a couple of alternative YouTube channels. It's called BitChute, one of them. You've probably heard of it. It's good.
Yeah. Awesome.
All righty. You take care, and don't put out that fire, because you're a burning blogger, you're coming out with the truth.
Yeah, I'll keep going. I'll do the best I can.
All right. Nice to meet you, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Right, thanks to the Burning Blogger. That was fantastic.
You're listening to the Andy Peter Show every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 8 p.m. GMT and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
From weeknight dinners to weekend winners, whatever you're cooking, whenever you're cooking, make it quality, local and tasty. Make it Scotch beef and Scotch lamb. Why? Because the very best meat deserves the very best recipes. Be inspired by healthy, delicious and uncomplicated dishes. And get the most out of your Scotch beef and Scotch lamb. Make it at scotchkitchen.com. Scotch beef and Scotch lamb. Look for the label.